We're in autumn, the season of crisp air, beautifully coloured leaves, the increased consumption of tea, at least in my case, and the season of Halloween and some other holidays too, which I will talk about later in this lesson. But first, Halloween is celebrated on the 31st of October. It dates back over 2,000 years, and it was originally celebrated by the Celts to mark the end of the harvest season and the start of winter season, which the Celts believed was a time the boundary between the living and the dead was kind of blurred. But that could be the fog, right? I don't know. But as time went by, Halloween evolved into this spooky celebration that we all know today. Hello and welcome to Love British English. Today I'm going to go over some vocabulary that is related to Halloween and the autumn season, as well as some other holidays that we celebrate in the UK. So let's get started. First, we have hocus-pocus. I mean pocus, hocus-pocus, not focus, but I do want you to focus. You'll understand why I said that. Hocus-pocus is a phrase that basically refers to meaningless words that are used to deceive or trick someone into believing that something is true. So in this case, I tried to deceive you and make you believe that the phrase was hocus-pocus, but it's not, it's hocus-pocus. It basically means that something is nonsense. It's a load of rubbish. This phrase is also linked to magic and tricks. So magicians would often utter the words of hocus-pocus when they're trying to perform some kind of trick or illusion, like transforming a rabbit into a dove or something. But here's another example sentence to give you an idea of what hocus-pocus means. For example, the advertisement claimed that I could master British English in 10 days, but it sounded like hocus-pocus to me. It basically sounded like a load of rubbish, right? Nobody can master British English in 10 days. It's impossible. Next, we have bonfire. Bonfire. This is basically a large outdoor fire. Let me put down my tea. For example, we gathered round the bonfire for Guy Fawkes Night. We gathered round the bonfire for Guy Fawkes Night. Speaking of Guy Fawkes Night is also referred to as Bonfire Night. This holiday is celebrated on the 5th of November. In 1605, a man named Guy Fawkes and a small group of men attempted to blow up the Houses of Parliament in London to assassinate King James I. This was named the Gunpowder Plot, but luckily it failed and Guy Fawkes was arrested. The night is now celebrated with bonfires and fireworks, also known as Fireworks Night, and effigies of Guy Fawkes symbolising the preservation of the monarchy. An effigy is a sculpture of a person, like a model of a person, that is used to be burnt or damaged, smashed in a public place. So it's usually a sculpture of somebody who is not liked by the public. And basically we make these sculptures of Guy Fawkes and we put them in the middle of the fire on Bonfire Night. Not everybody does this. It was more of a tradition in the past, but maybe some people still stick to that as well. And basically we call them guys. These guys burn in the bonfire. And the fireworks, they basically represent the explosives that were never detonated in the plot. And it definitely would have been explosive because there were 36 barrels of gunpowder placed in, I believe, the cellar of the Houses of Parliament. So if that gunpowder plot was a success, it really would have blown up the famous landmark that we have today, and luckily it didn't. This night is usually celebrated with families and communities coming together to celebrate with a bonfire and some food stalls, music and some form of entertainment maybe. While this event does have a historical background, Modern celebrations often focus on community enjoyment and the spectacle of fireworks. And a spectacle basically is when you enjoy watching something like a show. It's amazing. Okay, so it's a spectacle of fireworks. Now moving on to some vocabulary, we have jack-o'-lantern. Jack-o'-lantern. So this is basically a pumpkin which is carved into a shape of a person's face, and usually a candle is placed inside. To carve something means to cut out a shape from a certain material. So you can carve a piece of wood or you can carve a stone. In this case, we are carving a pumpkin. And the carved pumpkin is believed to scare away evil spirits and protect the homes during Halloween. Next, we have the vocabulary crisp. Crisp. And yes, we do have a type of food which is called crisps. We often refer to it as a plural, crisps. If you have one piece of it, then it's a crisp. But when it comes to autumn, crisp means cool, fresh air. We sometimes call it autumn air. For example, I love going for a morning walk in the crisp autumn air. I love going for a morning walk in the crisp autumn air. Next, we have a costume. A costume. This is a piece of clothing worn to disguise or dress up as someone, especially for Halloween, but it can be used in other areas as well, such as film sets or TV sets. You might have heard of a costume designer. So that's somebody who deals with what the actors are wearing. But in this lesson, I'm referring to more of a Halloween costume. For example, what costume are you wearing for Halloween this year? What costume are you wearing for Halloween this year? Speaking of costumes, on Halloween night, kids often participate in a game called Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat. And what that means is kids dress up in a particular costume, like a skeleton or a vampire costume, and they go around their neighborhood knocking on their neighbors' doors. When their neighbor answers the door, kids usually say trick or treat. In that moment, the neighbor has to either pick trick or treat. If they select trick, the kid has to perform a trick. If the neighbor is happy with the trick and was entertained, they would give them a treat as a reward. Some neighbors, they skip the whole trick part and they just give the kids a treat. And that's it. They close the door because within the next 30 seconds, the next child is going to be knocking on their door. When I was a kid, we used to say, trick or treat, a penny or a sweet. Trick or treat, a penny or a sweet. Basically asking for money, but a penny is not much. It's the smallest amount that you can get in Great British pounds. But some people did choose to give us more than a penny. So basically, trick or treat is a traditional game played by kids on Halloween night dressed up in scary costumes. Next, we have a cobweb. A cobweb. This is basically a spider's web. A spider's web. For example, the supermarkets were decorated in fake cobwebs for Halloween. So cobwebs are also associated with like spooky places as well as spiders, right? Most people find spiders to be quite spooky, but the whole idea of kind of putting cobwebs everywhere is also to scare away those evil spirits. Well, I guess people are hoping that the evil spirits would get tangled up, they would get caught up in the cobwebs and, give up trying to enter their home. I don't know if you've ever had that happen to you when you're like walking through a forest or something and you walk into some cobwebs and you're like, it's a terrible feeling. So just kind of try and picture these evil spirits all getting tangled up into cobwebs. That's the whole idea of why we use cobwebs for Halloween as well. In that previous example, I also mentioned the word spooky, and spooky basically means scary or eerie. Eerie. Okay, that also means when a place is like scary. So the pronunciation is just like ear with a E at the end. So eerie, eerie. For example, this castle feels spooky. Maybe it's haunted. So haunted is another word which means believed to be visited by ghosts. So if you've got a haunted house or a haunted mansion, it means that you believe that it's visited by ghosts. And again, this is a perfect word for Halloween. For example, the old mansion is said to be haunted. The old mansion is said to be haunted. Next, I have a nice word for you. It's not as spooky as the last couple of words have been. So this word is conker. Conker. And a conker is basically the nut of a horse chestnut tree. And when I was a child, I used to play conkers with my friends all the time. So let me tell you what the game of conkers is and how to play it. It used to be so popular. I don't know if children play it these days, but when I was a child, it was definitely a thing in autumn. So basically, you go to the park or the forest and you find a conker. There are these green spiky circles. You need to take that outer layer off, and then you get the brown conker inside. And what you do is you drill a hole through the middle of the conker, and you take a piece of string about 30 centimeters long, like a regular school ruler, and you thread the string through the conker, and you tie a knot at the end to secure the conker onto that string. And then you hang your conker, and the opponent is supposed to hit your conker with their conker. And you do that. You take it in turns, and then the conker that basically breaks first is the loser. And of course, the one that remains intact is the winner. All you need is a piece of string, a conker, and some friends. It's as simple as that. Back to some scary words. We have the word witch. Witch. A witch is a woman believed to have magical powers. It also has the same pronunciation as W-H-I-C-H, witch. Witch. For example, in the past, I've dressed up as a witch many times. Continuing with the theme of a witch, we have cackle. Cackle. Cackle is a harsh, high-pitched laugh. For example, the witch cackled as she transformed the handsome prince into an ugly toad. Next, I have the word misty. Misty. If it's misty, it's slightly foggy. Very usual for this time of year. Slightly foggy. For example, the graveyard looked rather spooky in the misty weather. The graveyard looked rather spooky in the misty weather. A graveyard can also be referred to as a cemetery or a burial ground. It is the place where dead people, are laid to rest, or buried, means placed, buried under the soil. And that's it for today. I think it's time for me to go and finish my cup of tea. If you've enjoyed the lesson, let me know in the comment section. I really hope you've learned something new today, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye. Actually, I'm not going to drink this because I hate cold tea.